Welcome to episode 4 of the Rich Lessons podcast. How we are nearing the end. Well, secondly, we are at the end of January, which has been the longest month, I think, of my life. It's been a crazy January 2025, and we're preparing to go into February, and we're going to talk about some things that has happened in January, especially with this new administration, and also some things that will be happening coming up in the next week or two. That's going to be what's going on with these DEI rollbacks. That's going on with the big news that has come lately about the Fed freeze, unfreeze, what's going on. And then we can't forget about, though, on a lighter note, the Super Bowl, which is in New Orleans, which is Sevetri's hometown. And so we are going to talk a little sports to lighten it up at the very end. But let's jump into the DEI rollbacks. It has caused so much chaos over the last few days. And Sevetri, because you are also in Gov Tech and you politics, government is you know it. I gotta go to you. What's your thoughts?
Well, first of all, DEI, we're talking about corporate, right? So we're talking about the corporate world. We're talking about Target. We're talking about Walmart. We're talking about Costco's saying, we stand the 10 toes down in our DEI efforts and initiatives. And so really, when we think about DEI rollbacks, it's starting and has started at the corporate level. It's clearly at the federal level for the government. But what has really grasped everyone's attention and held it tight for the past few days has been the DEI rollbacks at Target. Now, Walmart did it a couple months ago, and then they threw a little Love Jones on us and had people falling all over Nia Long and them kind of doing this commercial. But everyone right now is focused on Target. So
I want to give you the list. So I pulled up the list. Target, crazy enough, is number 1 on the list. So you're right. Clearly, Target is top of mind when the conversation is happening. So the list, of course, Target is top of the list. Meta Platforms is on the list. Amazon, McDonald's, Walmart, Ford, Lowe's, Harley Davidson.
Yep.
John Deere.
Come on.
I don't know about that. Right. That's kind of not a surprise. But those are the top that are listed as far as the corporations who at the gate was we're not doing it. On the other side of that, though, shout out to those who said, nope, we ain't doing it. We're keeping what we got. Costco, you just mentioned Costco. Apple, see, on the back right now. Shout out to Apple. Shout out to Apple. And crazy enough, because I was in fintech, JP Morgan.
And Goldman Sachs and Elf products, right?
I feel that people would have actually not put JP Morgan if you're just thinking from an outside view of maybe some of their history, or big banks, big banks history. They've probably been they're definitely on the other side with Target and the rest of them. But no, JP Morgan was
And honestly, I think that if you're kind of in that network and circle, and I have definitely been in and am in JP Morgan Chase as a client, and then also Goldman Sachs, because I was in Goldman Sachs, this business program where they had all the startups. And so they have heavily invested in initiatives for Black people. They created the 10 billion initiative for Black women specifically. They actually just accepted their next cohort, right, which they just announced a couple of weeks ago. And so, no, it's actually, to me, not surprising. I would have been shocked. And this is the reason why people are shocked about Target. Because the way I would have been shocked for JP Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs to roll back their DEI, and I hate to call it DEI efforts, right? Just doing what you're supposed to do, right?
Yes.
Creating equitable access to opportunity, right? Do what you need to be doing.
And JP Morgan also had advancing Black pathways, which I think is now renamed to something else. But to your point, this is not the first time that JP Morgan has purposely and consciously done something for the betterment of the Black community.
Yeah, and what I was getting at was the reason why I would have been shocked for Goldman Sachs and for JP Morgan Chase to roll back their initiatives because they poured so much effort into it is the reason why people are so upset at Target, because they have done so much and they have created so much energy and synergy and momentum, and they have made so many big announcements. For them to roll it back is just shocking to so many people.
I mean, think about Target. I mean, we were walking into Target and they were doing all the commercials and they were having like all the Black hair care. So I was actually extremely shocked. Target by far surprised me. None of the rest of them honestly necessarily surprised me, but Target surprised me. Because you have Tracy Ellis Ross, who has her hair care line in there. You have Tabitha Brown, who has so many products in there and who's done so much promo and all. Yes. So it's interesting to backing up your point. Target has done a lot when it comes to particularly working with Black businesses or allowing them to being a pathway for them to get their products out. And so that by far, I understand how and why there's been so much chaos around the fact that Target rolled theirs back.
Yeah, and I think that the discourse that we have seen online against Target has essentially been, and I say not just for Black people, they're saying for minorities, right, in general, in addition to Black people and Black businesses. And I looked it up, and in 2020. They announced an initiative in which they were going to try to put 500 Black-owned businesses on shelves. They currently have only gotten to about 100, right? So they have not hit that mark. And it makes me think, like, are they rolling back this DEI initiative so they don't have to uphold that target goal, right? And they're just using this to be able to drop that initiative in general. And so those are some of the things that I'm thinking about. But how are you feeling about how some people are coming at Tab and others who are basically saying, like, yes, I understand that this is a huge issue and I'm super disappointed in what has happened. However, we still kind of need for y'all to go and buy our stuff or our products. But on the same vein, they're saying, do what you want. I don't want to tell you how to spend your money. However, we are going to suffer if you don't go and buy our products. So, they basically say just be selective if you go and buy products from Target, just buy Black-owned products. Whereas other people are criticizing them because they're like, oh, so you just want us to take care of you, right? Like, forget the cause, forget like us boycotting Target altogether. It's either you got to be all in, you can't just be halfway in. So I'm curious to know your thoughts around that.
I will say, as a business owner, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, it is not as easy just to go and be like, hey, Target, F you, take all my stuff off the shelf. I mean, so for some of them, that literally is like their business. Like, that's their main way to feed their family. Now, it's so many layers to it, to be quite honest. It's not a one way or another, in my opinion. Like, there's so many layers to it. Like, you got to know how business works, number one. The ability to get in a major retailer doesn't happen to everyone. It's not easy to do. Like, shelf space is limited. I don't care what retailer you're at. Like, shelf space is not as open to anybody. Grocery store, Target, it doesn't matter. So you have Black-owned businesses who get shelf space. That's a big deal. Again, on the other side of that, we talk about, I've seen a lot of people come in and be like, oh, this is just more of the reason that as Black people, we just create our own. I think the one I've seen the most, that's probably like the more viral piece of it, is we need to create our own Amazon. And it's like, do you know how much was invested into Amazon before Amazon became Amazon? The ability for someone that looks like you and I to start Amazon tomorrow is, it just doesn't work like that. We talked about that on last week's episode of fundraising. it just doesn't work like that in our world, unfortunately. So I get both sides. I think that as a collective, we've tried multiple times to come together as a collective, especially when it comes to retail, or who we are going to boycott as a collective. And I just don't think we have been successful at it. We saw the same thing happen back with George Floyd, when you had all these corporations who committed to all this money for Black businesses, for Black investments. And how long did that last?
Right. And I think, honestly, yes, there's like the small group who basically like, y'all need to pull y'all stuff off the shelves and we need to just direct this towards or create our own Target, right, or our own store. And or I'm just going to buy direct, right, off your websites. And so I think there's another element to it that even has me a little conflicted, because at first I was like, okay, if I go to Target, it's only going to be because I'm going to go in and buy Black products, right? And then I was just like, I know my ancestors looking down thinking, y'all some weak chumps because y'all can't do nothing as a collective. You know what I mean? Like, for a boycott to really work, you have to eliminate all access to the dollar.
We have tried forever. We just have not done a good job as a collective when it comes to making a decision. It just, again, I just use the George Floyd one because it was probably the most closest one to what's happening right now. Corporations made promises. They pulled out. We were going to all get together and say, we're not going to buy it on this day, or we're going to do this on that day. And it just hasn't happened.
Yeah. And I think one of the issues is that the Black community wasn't dependent or a slave to, some people say, white masters in that way, to corporations, right? And so you have the SCLC, they were receiving $1 million sponsorships from these white corporations, right? So our civil rights leaders and those who are leading these organizations were not being funded, right? Their existence were not being funded by white people, with the exception of NAACP to a certain degree, right? Because it was started by white people. But generally speaking, if you look at the urban leagues, if you look at NAACP, which I do feel like they have come out very heavy against this, but it's kind of hard to bite the hand that feeds you. So if you look at their sponsorships and their dollars, where they come from, they have historically, over the past at least 10 years, and definitely since 2020, come from some of these major corporations. And so to then turn around and call a boycott against those same corporations that just gave you $5 million, I think it's another way for those corporations to keep those leaders of historical civil rights organizations at bay. And that historically had not been the case in the past, right? And so I think that there's a lot of conflict across the board. I think there's a lot of comfortability across the board with consumers who just don't want to be inconvenienced. And there's this other piece. Well, if we do completely boycott, we will ultimately hurt those businesses on those shelves. And I will say that I went from one side, okay, I'm gonna go in and get these Black products, to now I'm out. Screw them all. I'm a boycott. I'm a boycott 100% for the foreseeable future and see what happens. And I am going to continue to buy the products that I had historically bought from other places, and not just direct, but some of the products that I buy and that I am legitimately have tens of thousands of dollars in investments in that are sitting on Target shelves. I'm going to buy them from other retail stores that are not rolling back DEI.
Do you think Target in particular will change their mind, change their tune?
I think they will if we don't shut up about it. And if they really feel it in their bottom dollar. Because if I was Target right now, I would be like, they not on the same page. And so let us just let this news cycle go ahead and pass by, just like it did with Walmart in December, and they'll be back. I think that is probably Target sentiment right now.
So what are your thoughts on, we're talking about, we're mixing in the facts, we're mixing the history, we're also mixing in the viral piece of it, social media saying the chaos from there, and a lot of what I have been reading when it comes to the DEI across the board is, well, technically DEI doesn't, the data shows that it's not like we are benefiting the most from it anyway, as far as it's Black people. So do you think that that makes a difference, that the data shows that we don't benefit the most from it anyway?
I think one of the reasons why we saw like a freeze on federal government loans and grants, and why now they have removed that freeze within a matter of like 24, 48 hours, is because these MAGA supporters are literally like blowing up people's mentions saying, I voted for you and I lost my job. I think that's one of the reasons why they are basically like, oh, let us put a pause. There's too much confusion around it. But yeah, I mean, 70%, what I think a report said, of DEI jobs, particularly in that C-suite role, are actually filled by white people, white women. And this is not a surprise to us. Like, we have been literally telling people, Black people, brown people, telling people for years, don't get caught up in that DEI stuff, because we don't really benefit like y'all think from affirmative action or DEI. The people that have benefited the most have been white women. And so I don't know why people are trying to act like, oh, shocking, when we have literally been telling y'all this, but people didn't believe us. I guess they were trying to really switch out DEI for Black people, because that's basically what DEI has meant. And I'll say this last thing about it. I think that Black women in particularly are being targeted right now in various different roles for being unqualified and sitting in these high-level DEI jobs. And I think that is a backlash because, one, former now Vice President Harris was a Black woman, and two, over 90+% of Black women voted for her. And I think we're being targeted as punishment because of it.
Yeah, the numbers are the numbers, the facts are the facts. And to your point, though, I want to say, and I know we've mentioned this before, if there's any indication or any proof that Black women have not benefited from this corporate America, entrepreneurial world, or anywhere else, we raise less than 1% of VC dollars. It's not like somebody's just handing us a check or giving us charity or making us in a C-suite, or that doesn't happen for Black women, like in any world. So again, it's not like we have benefited the most from DEI. Before we, wrapping up a little bit on that DEI conversation, what do you think is next? Because I feel like there's something new every day. There's a new headline every day. I feel like Trump lives for the chaos of sending out memos that are very vague, that nobody knows what the heck he's really talking about, but people are left to speculate, and it causes more chaos. But because especially what's going on with the DEI conversation, if you had to predict, where do we end up when it's all said and done?
I do think that there is going to be a continuation of what we're seeing. I was kind of reading this post by the sociologist, and she was basically saying the reason all this happened at one time, it is to keep us disoriented, right? It's to keep us in shock and in fear, and thus scrambled, right, in 20 different ways, trying to put out fires to distract us. And so I do think that we need to kind of get it together and focus, which is why I think when people are like, oh, we need to focus on target, right? Can we just do that one thing right now? Or we need to focus on this, right? Or can we do that one thing right now? Because you're going to be too split up and not get anywhere if you're trying to focus on everything at one time, particularly when it's happening at one time. And so if I'm being honest, if you're like a woman, a minority, just continue to do what you do, but just know you probably got to move a little different. And if you are a Black woman, minority woman in a C-suite role or a high position, particularly in federal government, and I have friends who are, and whose jobs right now they don't know they're going to have, right? Because they sit in a role that is 100% being targeted. And I just think that, and I told them, like, this, you got to lie low for a while and do what you can, have your meetings, ensure that other people are good mentally to prepare for what's to come. But yeah, I think there's just a lot going on. I think we just have to like really just keep our heads above water.
You said something though. I wanna hit that really quick. You said wait out as best as you can, and just stay prepared. But do you feel like some of us are acting like we are shocked when in fact we kind of should have been prepared, because it's not like he's doing something that we didn't know he wasn't going to come in and cause chaos.
Trump told us what he was going to do, baby.
Exactly. For me, it's like, yeah, I get it. I do get it. I promise. I get it. And it's like a lot at one time. But why are we shocked? That's me personally. I'm just like, why are we shocked? He literally said what he was going to do. Like the people around him already said what he was going to do. He's just doing.
Yeah. And I think that people that are not minorities, and even like people who are minorities, they didn't think that he was talking about them.
I agree.
And now they finding out he was talking about y'all too. And this is a classism issue now. Like he was talking about y'all too. I hate to tell you. Like Trump already said he was going to do the reverse of Robin Hood, that he was going to take from the poor and give to the rich. And he has kept his commitment.
I think it's still just mind blowing to me, the fact that people voted against their own interests. I know there's a whole different episode, whole different conversation, but it is the fact that people voted against their own interests when he said what he was going to do. And it's like, no, I'm going to vote for him. Try something different. The Dems haven't done anything. Wish the Dems could have done a better job. But people literally voted against their own interests.
Screw the Dems as well. Like, y'all cowards. And I say this as a Dem, by the way, and I say this who would help a lot of Dems get elected, but the Dems have put forward nothing but a lack of collective agenda. They sound like a chatterbox in the background who's getting tumbled on by Goliath, and they ain't winning as David right now. And Trump just came in and showed you, oh, look how much you could get done in a week, right? Look how much you could do whether you're wreaking havoc or not in a week. Meanwhile, Democrats have historically told us, oh, you guys don't know what you're talking about. It's going to take Congress. It's going to take an act of Congress to get this stuff done. And look what Trump came in and do. So if anything, Democrats could learn a little something from Trump by the ability to stop sitting still and being so afraid to do anything. And thus you get us where we're at now. And I'm going to say that loud and clear, because we're here because of Democrats and the Democrats' decisions. And so the whole party need to be shaken up, tumbled over, and burned down to the ground and erected new. And you heard it from me.
All right. So, but speaking of, well, I'll take that back. This podcast is about lessons, it's about resources, it's about insights. Are there any insights or resources that you have for particularly the Black-owned businesses who are trying to figure out what to do next because of what's going on with DEI?
Yeah, I think that so the freeze has been removed, right? And so now we have a situation where the loans for small businesses through SBA, that means that they were originally frozen and now they are not frozen, right? And so accessing those resources is flowing again at the moment. But you also have issues because you have certain programs, minority supplier programs, et cetera, that are like going to disappear over the next few years. And so I do think that we have to collectively come together. And it's something that I'm thinking about, like, oh, do we come together as primes? Do we do joint ventures to essentially make our businesses larger in size so that we can go after government contracts? I, for one, will still be going after government contracts. It was just going to look different, and how I move is going to look different. But I do feel like there will be opportunities for government contracts. We just kind of have to play it differently and hope that we are not targeted because of our race and gender.
With the freeze and with the again the memo that he sent out that was quite vague, if we're just being honest, that did cause a lot of like the chaos and people trying to figure out like, am I about to get fired if I'm working a Fed job? It's like, I'm not about to get Medicaid or Medicare. Like, is my SNAP about to be cut off? Can I not feed myself? You got nonprofits being like, well, what's about to happen? Like, it was a lot. But the memo was actually extremely vague. It didn't really give hard facts. I've read, again, because it was so vague, nobody really knows technically, I guess, the facts. But I read that this was Trump's way of saying, I want to start to audit everyone to figure out if you are actually spending money that we can be saving. Because remember, his whole thing was about, we got to cut all this, giving out all this money that shouldn't be given out. We got to cut federal spending because it's like we're just wasting money. So I have read, once again, the memo was quite vague. It wasn't as facts in the memo. But I have read and I've listened and I've heard that this was actually his way, or is his way, in his first step into figuring out how to cut federal funding, because people have just pretty much given away money or not doing what they're supposed to do with all the federal money that goes out to these huge federal programs.
Yeah, I mean, is there probably some waste in federal spending? Probably so. I'm sure there is. But as you know, just like in business, if your business is getting audited, are they going to shut the whole business down to come in and audit it? Right. Like, it's the craziest thing or approach to be able to do that, right? It's like, no, you go do your audits while the business is still operating. And then once you get your conclusions and you make smarter decisions about where cuts need to be made, like, you don't just shut down the whole business and then go in and do the audit. And so I think that is like my biggest criticism of the approach to trying to cut federal spending in certain areas. And then again, also poor people being targeted, right? Like, why are you talking about cutting Medicare and you're talking about people who have loans? And it's this crazy thinking. Like Section 8 housing, like my brother's father-in-law has Section 8 housing that he rents. And guess what? He wasn't going to get paid. Okay, he wasn't going to get paid because they were also on the cutting block for the freeze. People were calling frantically, asking about if they were going to be able to get their Pell Grant money and their loans, because they were starting school, right? They just started school. And so that money hasn't been dispersed yet. Like college educated. You had one representative who said, well, what do you think? He was asked by a reporter, well, about free lunches. And he said, well, I had a job in high school and I was able to pay my own way. Sir, stop it. Stop it. I'm pretty sure no one expects a little seventh grader or a head starter to go and work for their lunch. Like, we have to really get serious. And I hope that the Dems can start to really get serious about saving what's left of democracy that is the United States of America.
The craziest part about that is, you said it earlier, in this episode, which was Trump is all about taking from the poor, giving more to the rich. I believe wholeheartedly, and I've said this to you, and I've said this to so many other people, I wholeheartedly believe that we will see the biggest gap amongst rich and poor by the end of this administration. I believe we will see more trillionaires. Alum will for sure be a trillionaire, in my opinion, at the end of 4 years. I think we're going to see the biggest gap between rich and poor in the United States with this administration. Why that is even more significant to what we're talking about now is, if you are taking away free lunches and you're already pushing that particular group of individuals to be even poorer, that makes no sense. Like, you're going to take away Medicaid, Medicare, or food stamps, or free lunch, or Pell Grants, and yet they're getting poorer because of some of your other policies. That literally makes no sense. I mean, it makes sense in his world, I guarantee it. In the reality of the world, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I think that the overarching thought is that small businesses and business in general, and investors, et cetera, are going to thrive underneath a Trump administration, because he's going to remove some of the red tape that generally we are bound by. But, nothing like time will tell, right? Nothing like time will tell. And to see if that is distributed in an equitable way, right? So not just certain businesses, but all businesses, not just certain corporations or whatever, but those who just play by the rules, right? And so we'll see what happens.
Play by the rules is what the billionaire tech bros are doing. It's like whatever we gotta do to get on Trump's good side. We
like kiss the ring.
we gotta do it. You and I both been in business for a while in different levels, but particularly I'm going to ask you this because of what you have done in GovTech and just knowing a lot of those like politicians, but programs on the government side. If they are cutting more of the federal funding or opportunities for small businesses, what is the alternative for small businesses if they can't go and get an SBA loan?
Honestly, what do I think will happen, right? What I hope happens is that it's still a matter of, your numbers, right? So just like looking at paper. But here's the thing, the whole discrimination act that existed so that people aren't discriminated against because of their color for loans and all these other things, they also trying to remove that, right? But I do think small businesses will be in a position and will have to be in a position to try to work more in collaboration with each other. We do represent such a large consumer base, even our communities, working locally, working at the state level. And so I do think that small businesses will continue to do what they need to do to survive. And I wish I had like a specific, like, oh, do this instead of that. But we really have to kind of wait and see a little bit regarding how this rollback will impact us versus saying like, oh, well, I'm not going to get an SBA loan, so I'm not going to apply for one, right? Because at the end of the day, although things happen at the top, someone at the very bottom is probably the one that's going to approve it. And so are you having those relationships with your bankers and the people around you? Because technically it's up to them to approve some of this stuff and push it through. And so those who are at the very, very top, they can't see everything that's happening at the mid-level and at the local level. So I think that we just kind of have to do a little bit of wait and see, but just being prepared and making sure our businesses are in a good position and definitely in a good financial position to weather the storm.
Yeah, and we do have allies. I think that's we've always had allies in some way. So I don't think that should be discounted. Everybody doesn't agree with the craziness that's going on. So you're still going to have people who are fighting. It's not just black and brown who are fighting for and saying like this stuff is absolutely insane. We've always had allies to some degree. Yeah. And it's not about saying I'm white waiting for X to come save us, but we have always had allies.
Yeah, they're a little quiet right now, though. I ain't gonna lie to you. In fact, I was looking for the VCs for Kamala list. Gone. Erased. Website gone. Handles gone. I couldn't find it. So I do think people are trying to hide a little bit. So do I think people, our allies, will help us? I think they will. I think it's gonna be really quiet, and I think some of them may not. We'll see. Next topic.
Long sigh. Maybe a long sigh with a tear on top of it. Right?
Get a little tear, and get up and keep it going and push through.
Then you gotta like put like thug life on and like gotta push through it. All right, lighter note. Sports, New Orleans. We got the Chiefs versus the Eagles. I am personally pulling for the Eagles, by the way. I just want to throw that out there.
Me too. I was disappointed in the Bills.
I do think the Bills were going to win. I won't say the reason that I am cheering for the Eagles out of respect for someone's fiance/husband. So I won't say why I'm cheering for the Eagles, but I am cheering for the Eagles. But it's in New Orleans. Huh?
I said, now I'm curious, but I'm going to let it go.
It's Jalen Hurts. But, respectfully to his, I don't know if his wife, Beyonce, either way, respectfully to her, I would. But that, sometimes people are attracted to sports, not necessarily for the sport itself.
Not you though. Like, I just want y'all to know that Sheena is one of the biggest sports fans, and I can't wait until we can like do a whole episode on like women in sports, so y'all can see how big of a sports fan she really is.
We're definitely doing an episode on sports, particularly women's sports, by the way, which is skyrocketing right now. Like, absolutely. Maybe we'll talk about that later. But it's in New Orleans. This is the second time it's in New Orleans in 10 years.
I can't remember the last time it was here, but it's been about like 10-ish years. But, you know, New Orleans literally was built to host. And the city's designed that way. So it comes here. I think we just put in a bid to have it for like 2025. So trying to get it back here every 10 years, it seems like.
Do you feel, because there's so much that happens in New Orleans, by the way, you know, the Sugar Bowl happened in New Orleans, which was unfortunately postponed because of what happened on New Year's. But you have everything from like big college programming. Of course, you have Mardi Gras, which is New Orleans in itself. You have so much that happens in New Orleans. Do you think the Super Bowl is different, though, when it comes to bringing money into the city?
Yeah, you know, we're actually in the middle of Mardi Gras season, or carnival season, as we like to say. And technically, Super Bowl was actually supposed to be here last year, but it actually fell on the same weekend as Mardi Gras weekend, headed into Fat Tuesday. And so we actually swapped with Vegas, and New Orleans is hosting this year, and it's because of Mardi Gras. And apparently, once upon a time, they had Super Bowl on Mardi Gras weekend, and it was just too much for the city. It was too much all at once. And they said, never again can we have Mardi Gras and Super Bowl the same weekend. It just cannot happen. But here's the thing. You cannot move the dates for Mardi Gras, right? It's always the Tuesday before Ash Wednesday. That's historical across any island too, like Barbados, all those other places. They also, Trinidad, right? Same thing. And so Super Bowl is definitely, I would say, big business for whatever city hosts it, just because it welcomes in such a large number, going back to corporations, who essentially descend upon the city, and they're doing all these activations, and they're pouring money into the city. They're blocking out entire hotel rooms, right, for like weeks on end. And so there is a lot of money that pours into the city. And I will say, I don't know who's over there at the NFL. You know, there's a lot of controversy around NFL since 2020 as well. But I don't know who's over there pulling the strings around how they have included like locals. But a lot of our culture bearers, which are essentially like our Mardi Gras Indians, our artists, etc., have been booked and busy.
Even when I'm mistaken, the logo for this year's Super Bowl was created by someone local.
Yes, Queen Tash, shout out to her. Yes, she's a Mardi Gras Indian, and she does the most beautiful beading work. And so she was actually pinged to do the logo, and she beaded the whole thing. Like, you have to see like the real photo of it. Like, go look that up, and look her up as well. She's also on the cover of Essence last year during July, doing Essence Fest. And so shout out to her. But yeah, I mean, I will say the Super Bowl committee has definitely been working with locals for the past year to ensure that the Super Bowl feels like New Orleans. And I have been driving around the city, and it's feeling like New Orleans. I'm not gonna lie, it's feeling like New Orleans. So I am happy
New
about
Orleans.
that.
2 weeks ago, I was looking for king cake, by the way, which is why I was there, and I could not find any king cake.
What?
Every place I went said sold out. True story.
Yeah.
So first off, that's my latest trip to New Orleans. I stopped there, leaving Lake Charles, to get king cake, and no one had king cake. But is the city ready? Because the previous time I was there was so much construction, and they was trying to get it perfect. Clearly, is the city ready?
Girl, it's we're recording this on January 29th, and I would tell you we are not quite ready. We are not quite there. Construction is happening. I was passing by a mural, and so they were finishing painting. I mean, beautiful murals across the city John Baptiste, who is from New Orleans, is working with the Super Bowl with BMike, who is a popular artist here, and they're painting like 100 pianos, which is his signature instrument, and they're just like placing around the city. There's these huge murals of Mardi Gras Indians across the city, and Raising Cane's Todd Graves, of course, is from Louisiana and from New Orleans. He has commissioned local artists to do a mural for him, Terrence Osborne. And so it's really just good to see like locals being so integrated into Super Bowl.
As a local, Super Bowl is happening if this is someone's first time to New Orleans, or they still don't know too much about the city, but they are coming. Recommendations. Where should they go? They want to feel like a local. It is Super Bowl. It's going to be crazy, but they want to get a feel for New Orleans. Where should they go?
So I will say, because of this question, I have created like a spreadsheet for all my friends to do New Orleans like a local. But for food, I'll probably send you to Dookie Chase. I'll probably send you to Chapter 4, who are Leah Chase's restaurants. I'll probably tell you to check out Murrow's, by a local restaurant owned by Larry Moreau, who's a Black and Korean restaurateur here in the city. I would probably tell you to go to Nina Compton's. I would tell you to have some fun and go to Caesar's Casino if you are of age, right? Because what they've done with that casino is like crazy if you've ever been to it in the past, like 10 years ago or so. Go walk on the riverfront. There's just so many things to do in New Orleans. Go to Studio B, right? Which is BMike's studio in the Bywater. There are so many places in New Orleans that you need to like see if you have not seen them, and get off Bourbon Street, you know. Now I will say that
everybody goes to Bourbon Street, but we are going to, when this episode drops next week, which is the 2nd February. No, sorry, the 2nd. What is it? The 5th? Whatever date it is before the Super Bowl. So therefore, we are going to commit. I'm going to actually technically commit Sevetri because she knows that I don't. We're going to put out a list. Well, she already has a list. She just said it. We're going to couple this episode with a list so that you can enjoy New Orleans during the Super Bowl like a local.
I got that for y'all. A lot of great things happening. A lot of brands activating. I probably received like 20 invites from, from everyone from like Popeyes and Don Julio, who are doing a partnership, to Uber One, to Starter. Y'all remember y'all had Starter jackets back in the day? They back. They hosting an event. They doing a little pop-up, So everybody is in town doing some type of event, some type of activations. And it just goes to show you that people say some of these people be crying broke, but they be having money for what they want to do. Because they are putting some money into these events. You hear me?
I mean, you gotta have money anyway, because Airbnbs and hotel rooms,
crazy.
Like
$3,000 plus a night.
Yes, and I'm not mad at it. Make your money in New Orleans. I'm not even mad at you. And people save up for big events like this. I'm a little frugal, so but I love New Orleans. So as you close out episode 4, any last words, any lessons that you have learned or want to give out based on what we've talked about today?
I would say my rich lesson for this episode is believe people are who they say they are the first time. Like when people say they gonna do something, believe them the first time, right? Like don't try to repaint or reimagine the picture when it is just what it is. But for business owners, I would just say I think we're gonna be okay. And again, it's all about not working in a silo by yourself and ensuring that you have people to read over your contracts, right? Make sure that you're submitting them the proper way so they're not eliminated. Have people to like bounce ideas off of, or see who's in your network that can like potentially reach someone that you might need to get a connection with. And so just be vigilant over the next couple of years.
Facts. My rich lesson is look into a bunker.
I'm over this. I'm over her.
It's never too late to figure out how to actually build a bunker. No,
You watching that new movie? That new show with Sterling K. Brown?
No, I haven't. Does he build a bunker? Because I didn't go like.
I mean, we beyond bunker. We in doomsday land.
Right. Yeah.
But go watch that show. Go watch that show. It's called Paradise, and Sterling K. Brown. And yeah, when I tell you, I don't know if they knew it was coming, but they definitely is feeling like
stuff like that scares me. Like something comes out and it's like, how did they know that? You ever seen the movie Contagious?
Yeah.
It came out like 2012 and it's like the exact same thing that happened during COVID. It's like,
yeah.
I think they create a movie almost identical to what happened 7 years later. Like,
well, it's kind of like The Simpsons, though, right? The Simpsons writer basically said that he just looked at history, right? And it was like, because we were like, how did they know that? How did they know that? And so they were looking at other dictators, other things in history, and then they would just write this thing, into the future and American style. And some of those things, came to fruition. But yeah, sometimes it's just history repeating itself.
Okay, I guess. All right. My
rich lesson.
My rich lesson. I actually tweeted this. Not tweeted because I don't even do X. I put this on Threads. I threaded this out. How do you say that? What do you say about Threads?
You're threading.
Thread it out? Like I don't even know. On Threads. I put it on Threads though. And my rich lesson is that in today's world, because everything is social media first, the dopamine, the whatever. You have a choice, and you either can stay uninformed by completely removing yourself away from traditional news, social media news, or you can decide if you're going to be a mixture of misinformed or overinformed because of all the chaos that you will read if you decide to be online to whatever degree. Even if it's not social media, but even worse if you're on social media. So take my rich lesson, you either going to be uninformed, misinformed, overinformed, misinformed, or underinformed. It's just the way of the world today. You have to make a smart decision for yourself and put your mental health first. So that's my lesson.
Yeah, pick your poison, I guess. Well, thank you all. Thanks for listening. We'll be back probably another week here. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm going to try to get out and about for Super Bowl and bring y'all some content. We're going to see how it works. We're going to try to do what it do. But in the meantime, between time, we'll see y'all next time.
Deuces.